I have been making YouTube videos for over 15 years. My oldest channel that I still have access to has videos of me talking about video games from 2008, and this past year was a big year for me because my main channel turned 10 years old and I turned 30 years old, and I think these milestones have me reflecting on my sort of journey, where I came from and where I am now, and I've been reflecting on my relationship with video games. And over the last, I would say, probably 5 years, my relationship with video games has changed dramatically, and I've found that on one hand I love gaming because it's literally my job at this point, but on the other hand I feel like I've lost it as a hobby, and so my relationship with video games is really weird right now. And a lot of you might be thinking, okay, well, you just said you turned 30, right? You started playing games when you were a kid. You are no longer a kid now. I wake up with back pain, okay? But I don't actually think that's the case, right? Like, that would make sense logically. You're not a kid anymore, therefore you don't like the same things that you used to, or at least you don't have the same relationship with them, and you don't find them as engaging as you once did. And maybe, you know, there's probably a component to that. Sure, I'm willing to admit that, but ever since I made the 10-year anniversary video on my main channel, I've really been thinking about my relationship with gaming and the current state of video games and the video game industry in 2024 going into 2025 and beyond. And I have come to the conclusion that it's not just age, it's not just me. There's no way, because first of all, older games that I still own hold up pretty well, and second of all, there's no shortage of 30-year-olds or 20-year-olds or teenagers on YouTube talking about the horrible state of video games right now. So in this video, what I want to do is talk about 6 franchises. There are 6 franchises we're going to talk about in this video that I'm going to use to drive my point home, to prove to you guys that it's not just age, it's not just that you or I are growing up, it's not just personal preference. Gaming is literally worse now. The games that you and I know and love are actually just worse now. They're just worse, straight up. And I'm going to start this discussion with a franchise that literally taught me how to read. Okay, I got my Game Boy Color, my yellow Game Boy Color, with this actual Pokemon Yellow cartridge, okay, the one that is in this box. I got them as I think it was a Christmas gift in the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was 1999, like the very end of 1999. So I was like 3 or 4 years old when I got my hands on Pokemon Yellow, okay, and I do actually have the Japanese version of Green, like the original Pokemon games, okay, but it doesn't stop here. This isn't just nostalgia. I have all of the games on the Game Boy Advance, even the other Game Boy Color games like Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and who can forget the DS and 3DS era? Like, these are iconic, right? The Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire remakes were incredible, and X and Y, even though they were easy, they introduced Megas, which was awesome. Oh, you thought I was gonna forget HeartGold and SoulSilver, you silly goose? I got these too. And yes, I even have all the hot garbage on the Nintendo Switch, okay? Sword and Shield were fine. These actually almost unplayable and complete trash. Same thing with Legends Arceus, okay, I've got that too, it's not good. But my point is that in general, the Pokemon community pretty much agrees in unison that Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet at the very least are worse than some of the older games that they've played, right? I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. Maybe you liked those games, okay, and I thought Sword and Shield were fine. I'm not gonna say that you didn't like them, but what I will say is that you probably believe that they're not the best in the franchise, and that the best in the franchise is behind us, right? Whether you started with Red, Blue, and Yellow, or Gold, Silver, Crystal, or Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, or you're one of the Black and White kids, okay? No matter where you started in that timeline, we can all agree at least that the franchise is worse now than it was before, right? There's like so few people that would disagree with that it's not even worth addressing. But you don't even have to take my word for it. These are the actual review scores from Metacritic versus users for the last like 20 years of Pokemon games, okay? And as you can see, in orange is the user score and in blue is the Metacritic score, okay? okay? Clearly Metacritic is on crack, and you can see an obvious trend line, a downward trend line from the user scores. Okay, now the outlier here being Legends Arceus, okay, which, look, users are wrong sometimes too, it's fine, okay, they were misled into thinking it was a good game and it wasn't, but that's okay. The point is that from Ruby and Sapphire over here, we have some really nice high scores up through the mid 2000s up until 2010. 2011 was Black and White, and since then it's kind of fallen off. Okay, and you can see the big Sword and Shield dip down here. Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl does not deserve a 53, by the way. That was also hot garbage. I do have those games as well. So the trend line here in orange is a downward slope, whereas Metacritic is pretending that all games are equal, which is hilarious. Especially Scarlet and Violet, a 77. Someone's got to be fired. Someone's got to be fired. Like, let's be real. Now look, I know I'm throwing in some hot takes here, okay, but my point is Pokemon is just worse. Most people agree. I think you probably would agree as well. Whether you hate the franchise now like I do, or you think it's fine but it could use some work, we can all agree that it's worse now than it was before. Okay, great. Let's move on to the second franchise, and that is Call of Duty. Yeah, Call of Duty. This is the reason that I even started my main channel, okay? And we've got all the gems on the latest consoles. We even have everything as far back as Call of Duty 1 and 2 on the PS2, and we got the good stuff on the 360, including the steelbook for the best Call of Duty ever, Modern Warfare 2. The only Call of Duty game that I don't own is the most recent release of Modern Warfare 3, and I think even I might not have even got Modern Warfare 2 because they were just so bad, and also my roommate had it, so I would play on his thing. But that's coming from someone who has like the special version of Advanced Warfare still sealed, right? I even have a sealed copy of Infinite Warfare that has the bonus, you know, Modern COD 4, the reason that everyone ended up buying this anyway. Look, I don't think Call of Duty players, I mean, listen, do we really have to, do I really need do I even need evidence for this, right? Like, this franchise has been so cooked for so long. It's embarrassing. It's truly embarrassing how such a dominant franchise has resorted to re-releasing Modern Warfare 1, 2, 3, not as remasters, but they've just literally repackaged the same IP to convince people to buy the games that they used to love because these games were the best sellers in the entire franchise. And then they like remade the maps, but with the new like engine and gunplay system and like just the awful weapon. Oh my God, bro, it's garbage. Like the whole franchise is, it's probably hopeless. Like, I don't think, and look, if you're a battle royale player, you're probably cursing right now, and I get it, but Warzone just wasn't for me. Okay, it was fine, it was fun when it first came out, I get it, it is what it is, but like, it's not worth still playing. I mean, come on, let's be real, right? Like, again, this is one of those things where like, even if you like Warzone, right, and even if you think the new Black Ops 6 is fine, I've heard a lot of people say that this is the best like entry in the franchise in quite a while, and that might be true. I've played it a little bit, not enough to fall in love with it. It just feels like another Call of Duty to me. But even if you think Black Ops 6 is great, and even if you like Warzone and the most recent Modern Warfare releases have been good to you, okay, we can at least agree that it's not as good as what it used to be, right? And again, this isn't even like a fully my opinion. Call of Duty is just less popular now than it used to be. This is the Google Trends data. You can see that Call of Duty, the interest for Call of Duty peaked in 2009, 2010, and 2011. We had a little bit of a little bump here in 2013, and since then it's fallen off. Now it's still a little healthy here, right? Like, I think the blue line is the most accurate one of the two here. I don't love search terms, they're not as great. Since 2004, like this blue line is pretty healthy right now. It's better than it was at least before the new Modern Warfare, right? 2019 is when the new Modern Warfare came out, and that came with, I think Warzone launched with that, right? Or at least it came right after that. I think it came right after that. Either way, one of these two spikes is Warzone, okay, and it's been relatively healthy since then, at least healthier than it was during the dark days of let's say 2015 to 2018, okay? So it's got a little bit of a revival, but still none of these peaks are even close to what the game was in 2013, or I guess you could argue maybe 2012, but certainly not 2011 or 2010, right? Like, these were the golden years of Call of Duty, and the data just suggested, right? Like, that's when the game was at its peak, and it's just worse now. Okay, once again, it's just worse now, objectively. And keep in mind, Pokemon and Call of Duty are like totally different franchises, right? They're completely different genres of game. They're from completely different developers. They're from completely different countries of origin. Okay, they have completely different histories. They almost couldn't be farther apart, right? But I loved both of these franchises very much, and they both have suffered the same fate. So let's move on to the third franchise that I want to talk about here. And this wasn't one that I grew up with. I was around during that time, but it was one that I got into a little bit later. And then as I did my research on the history of this franchise, I've come to realize that it has suffered the same fate as our first two examples. And that's none other than World of Warcraft. Can you believe over 7 million online? Can you believe that? These packages used to be so cool. You could open them up and they have all these pictures inside. Isn't that cool? That dragon looks so freaking sick, man. I love the artwork. There's a giant Yeti over here, and we've got the dark portal, right? It's incredible, right? It's truly incredible. I miss physical media so much. But World of Warcraft, okay, again, this is one of those franchises where if you play World of Warcraft, or you have played World of Warcraft, odds are you don't play it anymore, right? But even if you still play it, you still can agree that it's worse now than it was before. And maybe you thought, you know, Battle of Azeroth was okay. Maybe you thought Shadowlands was okay. Maybe you thought Dragonflight was okay. Maybe you thought whatever the most recent one is okay. What is the new one? Oh, it's gonna bother me now. War Within. Yes, the War Within. Even if you thought the most recent expansions were good, okay, you at least could admit they're not Legion. Okay, they're not Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King or classic vanilla, right? We can at least agree on that. And once again, this is a franchise that is completely different from Call of Duty, completely different from the turn-based RPG top-down sprite nature of Pokemon. This is an MMO RPG. Again, I'm not expecting you to take my word for it. Just look at the Google Trends data. Okay, from 2004, the game peaked around Wrath of the Lich King. We all know that in terms of player base and interest, and ever since then it has been a slowly just a downhill spiral until where it is right now. It looks like its lowest point ever was October of 2021. So that must have been just before the release of maybe a new expansion. I have no idea, but the point is that objectively the interest in this game has gone down over time. And now you might be thinking, you know, Omni, you've used Google Trends twice now as evidence of these games being worse, right? But really, this is just search data, right? Like how much somebody is searching for a game or a franchise or whatever. That doesn't actually tell us if the game is better or not, but it kind of does, right? Because if a game is good, then people are going to play it. And if a lot of people are playing a game, the probability that they're going to look something up about that game at some point online, whether it's web search or whether it's YouTube search, right? Like let's do YouTube. Oh, look at that. It changes literally nothing, right? This only tracks up to 2008. But the point is that if the game is popular or the franchise is popular and lots of people are playing it because the game is good, then there would be some correlation in the search data, right? You're gonna look something up, whether it's for a guide on, you know, a written guide or a video guide on YouTube or something like that. Like you're gonna look something up about these games if you really are into the game, right? It's actually insane to think about how massive the classic release was in 2019, and it's like not even close to how popular it was even in 2010. It's not even as popular as it was in 2014, which like blows my mind, right? Because it was a huge thing, right? Classic was a huge deal, but retail's not good. It hasn't been good in a long time, and the game's worse now than it used to be objectively, right? Even if you like it right now, you have to admit it's not as good as it once was, just like the other franchises we've talked about in this video. Let's talk about another one. Halo. Okay, Halo. Whew, man, I feel like on the original Xbox, Halo walked so Modern Warfare 2 could run. That's how I feel. Like if you were, I'm 30, if you're like 33 or 35, then to you, Halo and Halo 2 were probably like the GOAT, right? Like Xbox Live on the original Xbox was your jam. For me, it was, you know, Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3, Black Ops 1, 2, and 3, right? That's just how that works. But, you know, we have to pay respects for Halo, and Halo 1 specifically like really just pioneered the genre with a lot of the things that we know and love about first-person shooters, how they play, matchmaking, all the things that we kind of take for granted in the genre started here, right? And I know you could trace it back more to like Doom and 007 GoldenEye, right, on the N64. That I'm not saying this was like the end all be all, but like in terms of online play, like this was a big milestone for the first person shooter genre, right? Okay, we can agree on that. Halo 1 and 2 were masterpieces. A lot of people loved Halo 3. Halo 3 is where it started to fall off for me, which I don't even have it anymore. I sold it in college because I was poor, and I never bought it back because it was just like, these were the two that mattered to me the most as a kid. And once again, do I have to say it? Halo, it's a franchise that literally changed the entire genre, and it changed how we as gamers play against one another in PvP shooter games. Okay, it is a massive franchise. And where is it now? Based on the Google Trends data, it is racing World of Warcraft to the bottom of the chart. Okay, Halo 2 launched in November of 2004. Halo 3 came out in September of 2007 on the 360, and you could see that the popularity of both of these games is relatively close. Okay, this was the peak of Halo 1, 2 and 3, the trilogy, the GOAT. And now what do we have now? There was the new Halo that came out in, like, was that 2020? No, that had to be 2021, right? It wasn't this year. I think there might have been a new Halo. Was there a new Halo? Wait, hang on. I'm not even, like, you guys are gonna think that I'm like goofing around for this video, not knowing the name of the new WoW expansion, not knowing if Halo came out this year. Yeah, no, Halo Infinite was the most recent one. Okay, I was right. Halo Infinite was the most recent one. It came out on PC as well. I remember trying it. But what's this little bump here? Was this like, isn't there a TV show or something? Maybe that was that. I'm not really sure. But the point is, okay, Halo sucks now. Everyone knows it. Halo knows it. Okay, everyone who's played Halo knows it. Everyone knows that the golden era of Halo is behind us. Now, are you still with me? Okay, are you still with me? We've got two more franchises we're going to cover. The last one is a bit controversial, so stay tuned for that. But let's move on to an entirely different genre, one that actually transcends video games itself, and that is none other than Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I know I'm holding the games here for the Game Boy Advance. I have the one for the Nintendo Switch as well, which is really just a re-release of the one that came out, I think, for the Xbox One back in 2013 or something like that, 2012, 2014, something along those lines. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Originally came out here in North America in 2002. And for that, I think it was either 2002 or 2003. For one of those years, Yu-Gi-Oh! During the holiday season in the United States was more popular and was on more kids wanted lists for Christmas than Pokemon. Okay, for 1 year. It was the only year that Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever succeeded in doing that, but it's still insane to think that, you know, back in 2002, 2003, Pokemon was still mega popular, right? I think that was right around the time that Ruby and Sapphire came out, or maybe it was right before that, but like Pokemania in the early 2000s was wild. Late 90s, 2000s, that's all kids ever wanted. And for one holiday season, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was more popular amongst the kids, okay? And that's truly an incredible feat because Pokemon is the most profitable franchise in the world, right? It's more valuable than Marvel, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. I know it's actually insane to think about, but it's the truth. And for one Christmas season, Yu-Gi-Oh! Won. Okay, and as you guys know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not a video game series, it's a card game. It's a physical card game, and it's been adapted to digital formats. But the reason that I'm including this in this video is because, one, I loved these games as a kid. Like the Eternal Duelist Soul, incredible, right? Incredible, one of my favorite games ever for the Game Boy Advance, and I played it so much, it's insane. But again, I'm including Yu-Gi-Oh! In this video because it transcends gaming itself. It's a card game. It is a physical game that you can actually play. And does anyone want to guess how YouTube is doing 22 years after it came to the North America, to the United States? The answer is not good. All right, the answer is not good. We have quite the decline here for Yu-Gi-Oh! And really, I think the most accurate number here is probably the red line. I think the yellow one is whatever, but let's just look at the red line here for a second. That's the actual card game. Okay, and there's been a little bit of a revival in the card game ever since I think Master Duel came out for the PC, and there was a whatever the app is for iPhone. I never really got into that too much, but there's been a little bit of revival for the game in the last 2 years, I would say. But realistically, the peak for the game was literally 2004. literally 20 years ago. It fell off hard, made a little bit of a comeback here through the early 2010s, right? And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, around Z's was the time that I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh. So around this time is when I started falling back in love with the game, and then they released pendulums, they released links, and I was like, I'm out. This is garbage, right? This is trash. So Yu-Gi-Oh, not in a great spot, not as bad as like Halo or World of Warcraft, right? And like, really, if we're gonna be completely honest here, like let's just put this into perspective here for a hot second. Okay, this big green spike is Pokemon Go. Okay, so if we just remove Pokemon here, World of Warcraft still doing better than Yu-Gi-Oh. Halo, however, Halo is the red line. Halo is fighting with Yu-Gi-Oh for the bottom of the literally the worst franchise in this video, right? Even Call of Duty, I don't even have to put it in here, you know, Call of Duty, well, I'll do it just for the data. Even Call of Duty much more popular. Okay, but Yu-Gi-Oh not doing great. Okay, not doing great. And for the last franchise in this video, this one's personal for me. Okay, so you guys, you're not going to agree with this, and that's fine. I'm ready for the backlash. Look, Zelda. Okay, Breath of the Wild, incredible, loved it, right? Ocarina of Time, incredible, loved it. Skyward Sword and Tears of the Kingdom, didn't love them, and I know that these are like generations apart, right? This one came out for the Wii, didn't really like the direction they took here. Tears of the Kingdom just felt like more of Breath of the Wild, except you had to build stuff, and I didn't love the building, and so I just didn't like the game. Twilight Princess, incredible. Wind Waker, incredible. You know, all the other 3D ones I love, but they had the new top-down one with Zelda as the actual character, and again, Tears of the Kingdom felt lazy. To be honest with you, Tears of the Kingdom felt lazy to me. Maybe I have to play it more. Okay, maybe I have to play more. But with the latest Zelda game where you play as Zelda, and with Tears of the Kingdom feeling a little bit lazy, I'm worried about Zelda. I am, because I don't think Tears of the Kingdom should have existed, to be honest. It should have been a DLC. That's how I think about it. It should have just been a DLC for Breath of the Wild. Again, maybe I have to play it more, but I'm just really worried about the future of Zelda, because I love Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, and Wind Waker. Those were, like, to me, those are the three that define the genre for me. They are, in my opinion, the best Zelda games, best of the best, right? Breath of the Wild is up there. Don't get me wrong, I really did like Breath of the Wild, but it's not the same. Like, it's not the same as those original games, right? Like, you've got all the different shrines that you do, and yes, there's like the bigger dungeons, but really, like, it's about the shrines and the open world, right? It's not the same format as the previous Zelda games, and I'm worried that we're never gonna get a previous Zelda game like we did before. And that wouldn't be the end of the world, right? Like, we're moving into the open world era of Zelda, that's fine. But if they're all gonna feel as lazy as Tears of the Kingdom did, then I'm really worried about the future of Zelda. Okay, now again, Zelda is, of all these franchises, I would say it deserves to be in this video the least. Okay, let me just be very clear before I get hate comments. I still love some of the more recent Zelda games. Most of the Zelda games are incredible, okay, but I'm worried about the future of Zelda. And so my point is, all of these franchises have a few things in common despite them being very different from one another. First of all these franchises were phenomenons, right? Pokemon, phenomenon. Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Halo, Yu-Gi-Oh, Zelda, all phenomenon, like Mount Rushmore of gaming almost, for depending on who you ask, right? Some people aren't going to agree with Yu-Gi-Oh, some people might not agree with, well, it's hard not to agree with the rest. They really are like Mount Rushmore of gaming quality. But my point is, okay, they were all cultural and gaming phenomenons. They all impacted the culture in their own way, in their own genres, in their own niches. Halo pioneered FPS PvP games, right? For console. Call of Duty sort of perfected that, in my opinion. World of Warcraft is and was the most popular MMO of all time. Pokemon is the most popular turn-based RPG of all time, and Yu-Gi-Oh is one of the most popular card games. It's probably not as popular as Magic, but Magic's probably not in a great spot either, to be honest with you. You get my point, okay? Zelda is one of the best, I mean, you know Zelda. So they all impacted their respective niches and the gaming culture, and all of these had a shared experience around them, right? Like, that was one of the things that I loved, is that some of my best friends that I would go to school with played these games, right? I played Call of Duty with my friends, I played Halo with my friends, I played Zelda alongside my friends, I played Pokemon with and alongside my friends, I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards with my friends, my cousin Luke, bro, him and I playing Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and Call of Duty and all these other games, like incredible, right? The shared experience aspect of all these franchises was like, there was a personal component, the people that I know, and then the cultural component. Like I was there when they were popular, I was there when they were big, and we don't have that really anymore. And again, like I'm not saying that all these franchises are complete trash, they're all dead, especially not Zelda, but my point is that they're not in as good of a spot as they once were. We looked at all the data throughout this video, and so it must be the case that gaming, at least these Goliaths of the gaming industry, are worse than they were before. They just were. So for me, as someone who's looking to reconnect with gaming and someone who's looking to reignite that passion, and as somebody who's trying to reevaluate their relationship with gaming and fall back in love with it, I turn to these massive franchises that influenced gaming to this day. They changed the culture and they changed my life as a kid and made me want to make YouTube videos to begin with, right? That video I talked about before, my oldest video that I still have access to was me talking about Pokemon Battle Revolution, and my main channel was made to talk about Call of Duty, right? So these games had a profound impact on culture, gaming, and me on all these different levels. And so when I'm trying to get back into gaming, I turn to these franchises and discover that it's not just me, they're worse. All of them, maybe not Zelda, but they're all worse. Zelda in my own way, I feel is a little bit worse, but the rest of them, they're all worse, just straight up. We looked at the data, everyone agrees. Okay. And so I'm making this video to kind of remind myself and you guys watching that it's not just you. Gaming is worse now, and what we have to do if we want to fall in love with games is we have to turn away from these franchises. You gotta stop buying the new Call of Duty, you gotta stop buying the new Pokemon, because they're not going to give you the same experience that they once did, because the people making these games aren't good at it anymore. Whether it's the same people or whether they fired people and got new ones, or whether people moved on and quit, whatever the case might be. I know Blizzard's like goofing off, like they lost, there's a lot going on with Blizzard, or at least there once was. My point is that we can no longer rely on these franchises. Despite the rose-tinted glasses, they're gone. They might still be releasing garbage, but they're gone, they're over, they're done, and everyone knows it, everyone can see it. The reviews show, they prove it. The Metacritic score versus the user score, they're bad now. Okay, and so we have to turn to, you might be thinking, well, Omni, there's indie games, right? There's new franchises, and that's true. And I think the closest thing is Fortnite came out a few years ago. What was that, 2016, 2017, and it really blew up. And Fortnite was a phenomenon, and that was a little bit past my time. Like I caught it, but I didn't like really rip into it, right? A lot of kids at that time, like, it was mega, right? Mega. And now I would argue that Fortnite is still popular, but not what it once was. But that's the main franchise to me that like happened after me. We didn't really talk about Minecraft. I think Minecraft is still huge, right? But it's not as what it once was. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. My point is that, unless you're going to turn to something like Minecraft or Fortnite, which again are also arguably beyond their prime, although still probably healthier than these games, if you want to fall back in love with gaming, you have to turn to other franchises. And there is a problem with that, in my opinion, right? There is a problem with that. The problem is that if you're going to turn to an indie game or a smaller title, right? It doesn't have to be indie, but just a smaller game. Like if you want to play an MMO and you're not going to play WoW, you're going to play RuneScape or Final Fantasy, and these are just smaller communities objectively, right? Like they're just not as popular. They're still decently sized, but they're more into the mid tier rather than the AAA. And if you turn to those franchises, you do lose the sort of phenomenon, cultural impact thing that I was talking about before. It doesn't feel the same to me, and I also don't have that personal connection with these games. And especially if you go into the indie scene, like you can find those niche communities, but I don't know, there's just something missing for me. And maybe I'm being picky, and maybe I don't know how to fall in love with those types of games, and so I'm left in this really weird spot. So recently I bought Mario RPG on the Switch because that game came out a long time ago. I never played it on the N64 because I didn't have one, but I figured, okay, well, that's an older game that I might like, and so maybe it's like it's a new experience for me, but it still existed back then when gaming was better, in my opinion. So I've kind of been dabbling in that. I also jumped back onto Crash Bandicoot that I have on the PS4, the remastered Crash Crash Bandicoot. I also, not this year, but I think last year, the year before, I jumped into the Spyro remastered trilogy, and so I've been trying to like fall in love with gaming through these other adjacent franchises that I still have connections to, but they're a little bit older, but they weren't like as big as these other franchises, but I can still kind of go back to them to have new experiences with older games. And I'm finding that that is probably going to be my path forward, because I can't rely on the games that I used to love, which is sad. But at least I know after making this video that it's not just me. It is a lot of people feel this way, and all the data points to suggesting that I'm right in the way that I feel. And it's not just that I'm getting older. It's not just that I'm getting older. That might play some component, like it's certainly a part of it, right? Like gaming isn't my entire world like it used to be, but thank God that the majority of the reason that I don't love these franchises isn't because I'm getting older. It's just because they suck now.